How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Pretty well.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. This is great.
Mhm.
One second, let me just change some of the settings. So, hi, I'm Sophia Haber-Brock, and welcome back to Sophia's Studio. Today, I'm here with Aiden and Louis Ardeen, two brothers from Middletown who walked across the country to raise money for restaurant workers affected by the global pandemic. So, you guys are from Middletown, right? So, what part of Middletown were you from?
We're from River Plaza. We went to River Plaza Elementary School, Thompson Middle School, and Lewis went to South, and I went to Mast.
That's so cool to have two like regular guys from the local community who did this amazing thing. So it's like close to home. So, what was your original idea to do this trip? Like, where did it all grow from?
Truthfully, I was. We both worked in the restaurant industry before and during the pandemic, and we had moved home to save money, so we were back in Lewis was back in Middletown. I was in Red Bank, and then we both left because in the fall we were working with the public more, and we didn't want to get ourselves or especially not our parents or grandparents sick. And I figured it was time maybe to look for a different job. We both went to Rutgers. And then I was looking for jobs, and a friend of mine who lives in San Francisco, a friend of ours, made a joke that I could always just walk to San Francisco if I was looking for something to do. And that kind of got us thinking about walking across the country, or got me thinking about it. And then I asked Lewis what he thought when we were actually driving cross country to visit our grandma. And we were talking about it with our dad, and we sort of like gamed out like could we do it? What would we have to do? What would we need? How long would it take? Have people done it? We should make it a fundraiser. Who do we want to fundraise for? And so by the time we came back from our trip to Vegas in early December, I think Lewis and I had we were like pretty sure we were going to go for it.
We also have a friend, Vinny Martini, who's a good friend from college that we met. And Vinny works with like as an unofficial publicist capacity. So he was doing a lot of like work to reach out to news organizations and got us that spot on CBS New York, which was a big boost for us. And then as we started walking, and our social media grew by meeting with businesses and meeting with other people and just like sharing, asking them to share. We would just get reached out to by more news programs and things like that. And yeah, we just kind of just worked really hard to get our story out there and see if anybody would pick it up.
It's kind of funny. Like Lewis and I were very conscious of the fact that like we're doing this to raise awareness and money for restaurant workers. So we've been very careful to try to like not make the whole project like the Lewis and Aiden vanity project. Like, well, hey, look at us. But we have to go on the news because we're the reason like people want to donate because they trust us and they like our story. So it's been an interesting experience trying to like balance those things.
Mm-hmm. So, can you talk about how you documented your experience? And I saw a lot of your pictures and like the vlog style videos you took. So, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty, I guess like patchwork. I would just record certain things throughout the day. Definitely missed a lot of good things that I wish I recorded, but while you're walking, paying attention to the side of the road and things like that, like you can't record everything. I just used I bought an iPhone 12 mini, and this has 4K camera on it. That's what I used to record, and I used an app called Splice. But it was definitely fun to make those and have that for other people to see, like regardless of what we were experiencing, if it was like this mind-blowing adventure or just pretty mundane walking, which was generally more in the realm of that. I thought it was very important to share that with our followers because they seem to enjoy it.
They're pretty entertaining. You made walking pretty entertaining, which is impressive.
Thanks.
So you were the cameraman throughout the whole thing, or did you guys like kind of take turns, or?
I mean, Aiden did take video, but for the actual videos and the content that we produced, it was everything that I took. I would take a few good pictures throughout a day, Aiden would, and then we would just like airdrop them to each other, and he would write a post and choose the best ones. But yeah, I did most of the video and the editing.
It was a weird. It's a strange thing to do all across the country because you need like people's help. Like, and we knew doing it like we would need people's help to do it. Like we were self-funded. We worked to save extra money so that we could do this. But like, we couldn't possibly like have afforded to like stay in a hotel every night. Like some people do it like that. Some people have RVs, but like we were camping. We were trying to camp the most because it was the cheapest and it was the most convenient because like, especially out west. So like some of my favorite experiences were the people that we stayed with. When we got through Tahoe National Forest into California, we stayed with a couple and their boys in Rockland, California. And Lewis and I tried to go to bed at like 9 o'clock, especially when we're camping because there's nothing to do. It's just like go to sleep. Like we read, maybe we might write, work on a video. But so we stayed up until like midnight talking to this couple, Chris and Leaf. And it was just nice to like hear their thoughts about the world. They were so curious about our project. And like we found out we had so much more in common than we could have guessed. Like they backpacked around the world before they decided to settle down and start a family. So they were really interesting people to talk to. And like they gave us some valuable insights. So like experiences like that, I think were really cool. And I think it's something that we may not have totally expected. Like we knew we were going to be hiking and camping and seeing like the country, but those are the moments that stand out to me.
Like just the general like changes, like the subtleties throughout the country, like as far as landscape to like taking in the scenery and you're walking, it's such a slow thing. And it's like, and then you just notice it shift and you're like, oh wow, we're kind of in a different type of environment. Like we were in getting into the western Great Plains across Nebraska. It's like very farmy and it's more arid, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, we're in like the west. Like it just changes and you're like, it's still really flat, but there's more hills and there's a lot more sand, and the colors start to shift. And so it was like things like that were really cool because you spend so much time walking through one certain environment and then all of a sudden you're like, you realize it's like, oh, we're in a whole different landscape. And it's definitely illuminating to see, and like across a whole country. It's like, oh wow, we need to make some things. We need to think more sustainably about how we're gonna operate as a society and like just build things.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit more, like about society and also with businesses, and talk about the more realistic side of it?
I guess so. A lot of businesses were closed, especially in like the eastern and central time zones, because it's just more populated. So there's more businesses, but like there's a lot of, I guess you could say we were walking along like the Rust Belt, like below the Great Lakes. So especially in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, like tons of main streets that are like super, like a movie, like wide open. And you could imagine them like 60 years ago, what they must have looked like. But a lot of businesses, particularly restaurants, were closed. It kind of just like reminded me, one, just how bad this pandemic's been, but two, just like how tough it is to own a small business, period. Like people were so paycheck to paycheck and living in the margins just as business owners, even if it's not just a restaurant, but like any small business. That's something like a pandemic that like could disrupt your income stream for even 3 months or 6 months. Like that could be it. That'll push you. You could never recover from that. And that's just not businesses, that's individuals too. And that's why we were raising money for restaurant workers, because we know what it's like when, you have a certain amount of money coming in every month and you have a certain like level of bills. And if that math doesn't add up for 3 months, you're like pretty deep in a hole. And it can be hard to get out of that without some help.
And on the other side of that, can you talk about some of the like more positive experiences that you had, like seeing the small businesses that made it through the pandemic and they're kind of pushed through it?
Yeah.
Right. I'll speak to that. Like on the other side, it's kind of the exact opposite experience, which is like funny. Like we would talk to business owners and people who worked at restaurants, and they would all kind of say the similar thing. Like of the ones who did survive that we were able to meet with, obviously we had a lot more interactions with businesses that are still there, but the sense of community who like showed up during the pandemic to like support their favorite coffee shop or diner or something like that. Like the people just kind of were tipping extra and buying more food and doing takeout more regularly because they wanted to keep that business afloat. And that was pretty similar to our actual experience where we were working before we left. So I thought that was really cool, and it's definitely very meaningful, and it's not all doom and gloom when you're like, oh, corporations are taking over the country. It's like, no, there is still a huge, strong sense of community, and people respect and cherish their favorite restaurants. And people who work in restaurants are incredibly resilient and super creative. I mean, you operate with such thin margins to begin with, right? So you're used to coming up with ways to make your food better, make your, just make more money and have a better experience. So it's like, I think we were really lucky in a lot of the places that we came across. Like, it was like very much like super cool to meet with a lot of the people that we did, hear their stories.
And same with you, Aiden. Can you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like a lot of people explaining how they may have had to pare down the staff, but also like a lot of businesses involving their staff in decisions regarding like closing or indoor outdoor dining. Like, what is everybody comfortable? Like, there's definitely like a democratization of like, we're not just the owners, like we care about what our employees think. So like we're all kind of in this together right now because these are unprecedented times. And so we saw a lot of that, and I think that's super important.
Can you share any specific places that you went that specifically stood out?
There was one place in Omaha. We met the owner of a barbecue spot called Porky Butts in like West Omaha, Nebraska, and Blaine was like a pit master. Like we learned all about like there's just this whole barbecue culture of like competitions, and like these guys are like legends. And Blaine's like this big dude, and he looks like a pit master, and he was just like really cool. And he gave us like a ton of his time, and we like learned about his experience. And then we started talking about like his business, and he was like, I pay my dishwasher like $18 an hour. That's crazy. But it's awesome. And like his dishwasher's been there for years because he's making a really good wage, and he should be, because it's super hard work. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant and you're in management, you know how hard it is to keep somebody like, one, washing the dishes. It might seem silly and like you might take it for granted, but it's really important because you need clean dishware to like keep your business like during service. And then like he's like looking around, he's like, my family works here, my friends work here, everybody's worked here for years. Like I have like 80% of my staff from when I opened 7 years ago. And sure enough, during the pandemic, they were fine because everybody that worked there was paid well. They cared about the place. They respected the people who owned the business because those people respected them in turn. And they were thriving during the pandemic, which is like a crazy thing to think about. But like some businesses actually did more business because they were just ready to increase their takeout and all that stuff.
Did you find that there was like a shift throughout the country? Like the farther you went, it like changed. Like more in the West, was it different than here in the East Coast, or?
Well, quite frankly, like the effects of the pandemic are just not evenly distributed across the country. Like as soon as we got west of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, we were in towns where like, what COVID?
On the journey part, where like the walking along part, what were some of the like most difficult parts? And did you ever have like a moment where you were like, okay, let's just call an Uber, or we should just stop, or something like that?
The thought of quitting never crossed my mind. It wasn't really an option, especially like we raised $10,000 before we left, so we really couldn't quit. Like we owed all of those people, we owed them to finish, because they made an investment in us and they believed in what we're doing. So yeah, and I think it's probably the same for Lewis.
Yeah, no, however hard it was going to be was what it was going to be. I mean, I'm kind of like prepare for the worst, but like still think on like the best. And I think that, I mean, it was incredibly hard, and definitely aspects of it were harder than I thought they would be. But as a whole, I don't think it was as hard as I was expecting in that sense. Like, I don't know. I've been challenged many times in my life, and I mean, at the end of it, it's really just about where you're at in your own mind and your perspective about things, and those are things that regardless of how hard a day is, you always have some sort of like control in that sense of where you're at, staying calm and just, you know, being kind to yourself and the people around you, like your brother. But I mean, there's definitely some days where we were like beat up and we were worn out and, mentally exhausted as well as physically. But I think overall, like we were really positive the whole way. And that was something that you couldn't give up, like, I don't know. It was kind of like, I wouldn't be beaten in that regard by like whatever came our way. So yeah, there was no, there was no thought of quitting. It's like very determined.
Was there anything like an overarching like thing that was like the most notable thing that you learned?
So people are kind, there are people in the world who just maybe aren't nice people, but I don't think that anyone is either good or bad. I think, we're all mixtures of those things, it's a giant spectrum, but given the chance, um, I really do have a lot of faith in people and humanity to make the right decisions. I just think that you have to you have to put that foot first and show that you're that kind of person, and then let people see, and then they'll show you it themselves. Like, you have to share in kindness and compassion. And I say that that was probably the overarching thing, where it was like sometimes overwhelming how like the things that people would give you because you were doing something good, they would then be like, I'm good too, and it was really powerful. And like, I think that just people are kind. You just have to be willing to have that experience and share it.
It's so easy with social media now to just kind of like, you're not actually talking to people, and it's also really easy to be rude or make an outrageous claim on internet because there's not an actual human being standing there that you actually like. It's really hard to be empathetic through a phone screen. And so we were trying to like tap in on that and kind of share our experience and like make it really positive, and so people could like get a sense that like, everybody across the country is kind of, we might have different views politically or philosophically or whatever, but like we're all just like regular people that like at the end of the day want to be safe and loved and provided for.
Thank you for doing this interview, and it was great to hear your guys' experience and your perspectives on everything. And I think it would be really great for people my age and like students to hear it too, because it's very inspiring, especially because you guys are so local and yeah, it's like close to home, like I said before. I just wonder, so I know you said that you want to keep that balance between like focusing on the more important part of the project and also it's not like your show, but like what were some of the like the news stations and the people that noticed you, just out of curiosity, like what kind of shows were you on and like what were those experiences like for you, more on the personal side?
We've done a lot of local TV, so like Fox, CBS, NBC has like a local affiliate in all the small to medium to big markets across the country. So like those were fine. And like I kind of enjoyed those the most because like there were journalists, reporters would come out and we'd meet this cameraman and like actually usually have a conversation with them. But then we were on with Anderson Cooper on his like web series called Full Circle, which was pretty cool. I think we're going to be on Now This, which is, an internet publication, but then we were in People Magazine. And I'm sure there's more, but it's just been interesting because it's an opportunity for us to try to increase our exposure so that we can raise more money and get people talking about the things that we think are important. So it's just like, it's just kind of funny. I kind of think it's all really funny, like not to like, like make it seem like we're ungrateful or anything like that, but I'm just like, I can't believe we just had a conversation with Anderson Cooper. Like Anderson Cooper is like a legitimately famous person and like very important figure in like the American media landscape, and like he had Lewis and I on. Like the show before us was Captain Kirk from Star Trek, William Shatner. You know what I mean? It's just like hilarious to me. So we just like, I think that helps Lewis and I, because we do kind of think it's funny that we never take it like too seriously, unless we don't take ourselves too seriously, because it's not about us. We're just very lucky that we were able to do this, and we had people supporting us in our decisions and helping us along the way.
I do appreciate doing this, though. I think it's much more important to me to do things that are local and community based. And it's like, you're a student, like you should have all the opportunities in the world to do what you have to do to be the person that you want to be and have the life that you want to have. And you're doing a good thing, so you should keep moving on that. So it's like, we'll obviously help you out, and share our story with you, because that to me is where it truly matters. Like that's really important, and when it's something in People magazine, they're very much just trying to sell magazines, so you become branded by that and a part of that product, where this is actually more in a sense what I would like to be doing with our project. So I appreciate the experience, and I look forward to you sharing it with us, and then we'll post that on our Instagram when it's done too as well. So,
okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. This is great.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Nice with you.